It started like any other evening. I had just settled into my chair, enjoying the peaceful hum of my neighborhood, when my phone buzzed with an HOA violation notice. Again, I sighed, already knowing what it was about before even opening the email. My front door. Months ago, I had installed a custom mahogany front door with intricate carvings, a true work of art. It wasn't some wild, neon color abomination. It was elegant, well-crafted, and honestly added value to the property. But apparently HOA Karen, our insufferable neighborhood dictator, had decided it was unapproved because it didn't match the 5 identical factory-issued beige doors she personally preferred. At first, it was just passive-aggressive letters. Then came the fines, each more outrageous than the last. $250 for noncompliance. $500 for disregarding architectural consistency. $1,000 for continued defiance. I ignored every single one. I had checked the HOA regulations before installing it. There was nothing against unique doors. This was purely Karen's personal vendetta. One evening, I caught her lurking on my porch, measuring my door, scribbling notes like some unhinged HOA overlord. I confronted her, and she scoffed, saying, "This monstrosity is destroying the uniformity of our neighborhood. You need to remove it immediately." I laughed, right in her face. "Karen, it's a door. A normal, beautiful, well-crafted door. I'm not taking it down. You have no authority to make me." Her face turned beet red, and she huffed, "You think you can just ignore community standards? This isn't over." Then she stormed off, her heels clicking furiously down my walkway. I thought that was the end of it. I underestimated just how insane Karen really was. Days passed, then a week. More fines, more nasty letters. My lawyer assured me they were unenforceable, pure harassment. I stayed firm, refusing to cave. Then, one night, my security cameras picked up something bizarre. At 1:37 a.m., a figure appeared in my front yard. I sat up in bed, rubbing my eyes, thinking it was some random trespasser. But as I zoomed in on the feed, my stomach dropped. It was Karen. Wearing black yoga pants and a matching hoodie like she was some kind of suburban burglar, she walked up to my door and stood there, hands on her hips, muttering to herself. Then she disappeared off screen for a moment, and when she returned, she was carrying a chainsaw. I blinked in disbelief. A chainsaw. She yanked the cord, and the roar of the motor shattered the silence of the night. I grabbed my phone and called 911 immediately. Meanwhile, Karen pressed the blade against my door, revving it like she was in some kind of horror movie. I ran downstairs, flung the porch lights on, and yanked the door open just as the chainsaw dug into the wood. "Karen, what the hell are you doing?" She jerked back, startled, but then screamed in absolute fury. "This is for the good of the neighborhood. You can't just do whatever you want." She lunged forward, trying to shove her way inside, chainsaw still running. I kicked the door closed before she could step foot inside, but the chainsaw blade nicked the frame, sending splinters flying. My heart pounded as I held the door shut, hearing her outside, ranting like a lunatic. The sirens arrived minutes later, flashing red and blue illuminating my yard. Karen tried to run, but she was tackled to the ground by officers before she could make it past my driveway. The chainsaw, still running, was wrestled out of her grip, clattering onto the pavement. She tried to break into my house. I have it all on camera. I told the officers, still breathless. Karen, now pinned to the ground, had the audacity to shriek, "He's lying. He's ruining the neighborhood." I was just upholding community standards. The cops weren't buying it. They slapped the cuffs on her, charged her with breaking and entering, property destruction, and attempted burglary, and stuffed her into the back of the squad car. As she was being driven away, she screamed out the window, "This isn't over. You'll regret this. You all will." Spoiler alert. She was very wrong about that. The morning after Karen's chainsaw rampage, I woke up to an absolute firestorm of notifications. My phone was buzzing nonstop, emails were flooding in, and even my home's landline, which I barely even used, wouldn't stop ringing. At first, I thought it was just the usual HOA nonsense. Another fine. Another official warning from Mark Reynolds, the spineless HOA president? But no. As I scrolled through my texts, emails, and missed calls, I realized what had happened. The video had gone viral. Not just within the neighborhood, either. The security footage, Karen revving a chainsaw like a horror movie villain, trying to break down my door at 1:30 a.m., had somehow leaked onto social media. It started in local community groups, but within hours, it had made its way to bigger platforms. By the time I woke up, it had hundreds of thousands of views. The comments were brutal. "This is the most unhinged HOA story I've ever seen. What kind of suburban psycho does this? A chainsaw. She really tried to take down his door with a chainsaw." I'm screaming. I live in this neighborhood, and I can confirm Karen has been terrorizing us for years. This is her final form. I even saw local news stations picking it up. One anchor, struggling to keep a straight face, described it as one of the most bizarre homeowner disputes in recent memory. And just when I thought the situation couldn't get any wilder, my phone rang. It was Mark Reynolds, the HOA president. Now, Mark had always been a coward, one of those guys who pretended to be neutral while secretly enabling Karen's antics. He never liked confrontation, never pushed back when Karen steamrolled people with insane fines and rules. But now, Mark was in full-blown panic mode. "Look, we at the HOA had no idea Karen would take things this far. Obviously, we don't condone any of this." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. "Oh, you don't condone it? That's funny, Mark. Because I have at least 20 HOA violation notices with your signature on them, all saying I must comply or face legal consequences." Mark cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, we did approve the citations, but that was all within normal enforcement policies. We never authorized any chainsaw activity." I let out a cold laugh. "Well, Mark, here's the thing. Your little HOA's normal enforcement policies directly led to this disaster. And now you're all going to pay for it." Silence. Then a nervous chuckle. Now let's not get hasty. I'm sure we can work something out." Oh, Mark. Poor, naive Mark. I ended the call, immediately got my lawyer on the line, and filed a lawsuit against the HOA and Karen personally. Breaking and entering. Property damage. Emotional distress. Harassment. And guess what? I wasn't the only one. Once the video spread, other neighbors started coming forward. It turned out Karen had been bullying people for years. She had fined people for having the wrong shade of mulch, forced homeowners to repaint their shutters if they weren't neighborhood-approved colors, even tried to ban Halloween decorations because she claimed they were a satanic influence on the children. Lisa, my next-door neighbor, came over that afternoon, shaking her head in pure disbelief. "Did you hear? Mark's in full meltdown mode. He's trying to hold an emergency HOA meeting, but half the board members are bailing because they don't want to be associated with Karen's mess." Jim, another neighbor, laughed bitterly. And it gets better. Someone dug up the HOA's financial records. Apparently, Karen had been funneling extra beautification fees into a neighborhood improvement fund, except that fund doesn't exist. Oh, this was even better than I thought. Not only was Karen under criminal investigation, but now she was also on the hook for HOA embezzlement. That night, another news report aired. The headline: "Local HOA president arrested after chainsaw incident. Financial crimes under investigation." Karen's mugshot was plastered across the screen. And I'll be honest, I framed it. Because Karen, she wasn't just facing jail time. She was about to lose everything. And I was just getting started. Karen's downfall should have been the end of it. The chainsaw incident, the mugshot going viral, the HOA scrambling to cover their tracks. It all seemed like the perfect conclusion to her reign of terror. But Karen, she wasn't just any HOA tyrant. She was a cockroach in human form, and even after being arrested, humiliated, and investigated for financial fraud, she refused to go down quietly. The first sign of her desperation came 3 days later. It was a quiet afternoon, and I was outside replacing the damage she had done to my front door when my security app pinged me again. Another motion alert. I pulled out my phone, half expecting to see a random squirrel or a delivery driver, but instead, the live feed showed Karen's car creeping down the street. No way. I leaned in closer. She had her windows rolled up, sunglasses on, trying to look inconspicuous, which only made her more obvious. She was doing slow laps around a neighborhood, circling like a shark smelling blood in the water. Lisa, my next-door neighbor, stepped onto her porch, saw my expression, and followed my gaze. "You've got to be kidding me. Is that Karen?" Jim, who had been trimming his hedges, paused mid-snip. "Oh, hell no. Didn't she get arrested?" She had. And yet, here she was. A few minutes later, Karen parked down the street, got out of her car, and started walking toward my house. I had seen enough. I marched down the driveway, meeting her halfway on the sidewalk. "What the hell are you doing here, Karen?" She pulled off her sunglasses, her face tight with barely controlled fury. "I came to warn you." I blinked. "Warn me? About what? Chainsaw-wielding lunatics?" "Because I already had that experience, thanks to you." She ignored the sarcasm, stepping closer. "You think you've won. You think you've turned the entire neighborhood against me. But I have connections. People in high places. This little stunt of yours, it's not over. I still have influence. And I will make sure you regret ever crossing me." I let out a laugh, genuine full-bodied laugh. "Karen, you're literally under investigation for HOA embezzlement. You got arrested with a chainsaw in your hands. Your mugshot is a meme. The HOA is falling apart, and you're about to lose everything. What exactly do you think you're going to do?" Her eye twitched. Then she hissed, "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I stepped forward, my voice low, steady. "No, Karen, you have no idea who you're dealing with." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she squared her shoulders, attempting to regain some ounce of power she had lost. "Mark my words. This isn't over." Then she turned on her heel and stormed back to her car. Lisa, still watching from her porch, called out, "Hey, Karen, don't forget to check Zillow. I hear property values are way up now that you're leaving." Karen slammed her car door so hard the entire vehicle shook. And then she sped off. I stood there, watching her disappear down the street, shaking my head. Lisa walked up beside me. "She's actually insane. Like, genuinely unhinged." Jim nodded. "I don't know, man. I feel like she's planning something." And he was right. Because Karen, she was about to make one last, desperate move. And it was going to backfire spectacularly. A week passed after Karen's dramatic warning, and for a while, things seemed quiet. Almost too quiet. Her house sat empty, her blinds drawn, her car nowhere to be seen. I had half expected her to pull some petty stunt, maybe sneak onto my property in the dead of night and throw paint on my door, or file some ridiculous lawsuit against me for defamation. But instead, she had vanished. And then one evening, my security system alerted me again. At first, I thought it was just another false alarm, a raccoon, or maybe a late-night dog walker. But when I pulled up the live camera feed, my stomach dropped. There was a moving truck parked outside Karen's house. And standing next to it, Karen. She was back. And she wasn't alone. A group of 3 men, hired movers, were hauling boxes out of the truck, but Karen, she wasn't unloading things. She was packing them in. I blinked. Was she moving out? I wasn't the only one who noticed. Lisa, who had been watering her lawn, stopped mid-spritz. "Holy crap. Is she leaving?" Jim stepped out onto his porch, whistling low. "Well, I'll be damned. The tyrant is retreating." More neighbors peeked out their windows, some stepping outside, watching with thinly veiled amusement. Karen, however, was in a full-blown rage. She was pacing furiously, snapping at the movers, shoving things into boxes with unnecessary force, muttering angrily under her breath. And then she did something insane. She stopped, turned toward my house, and stormed across the street. I barely had time to react before she was on my porch, pounding on my front door. I opened it, arms crossed. "Karen, to what do I owe this unpleasant surprise?" She was seething, her face twisted in absolute fury. "This is your fault," she snapped. "You ruined my life." I blinked. "Me? Karen, you did that all on your own." Her hands shook with rage. "I lost everything. My house, my position on the HOA, my reputation. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. "What I did? Karen, you broke into my property with a chainsaw. You got yourself arrested. You stole HOA money. You destroyed your own reputation. So don't stand here and act like I'm the villain in your downfall." Her eye twitched. She took a deep breath, trying and failing to compose herself. "I hope you're happy. I hope you enjoy this victory. Because let me tell you something, you may have won this battle, but I will never stop fighting. You will always have to look over your shoulder, waiting for the next attack, waiting for the next move. I shook my head, laughing. Karen, I don't have to do anything. You lost. And you're leaving. Finally. And when you drive away, I want you to remember one thing, this neighborhood. It's going to thrive without you. Her face turned bright red. She opened her mouth, probably to spew more insane threats. But before she could, Lisa cut in from across the yard. Hey, Karen, need a goodbye gift? I have a no HOAs allowed sign if you want one for your next house. Jim chuckled, raising a beer. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Other neighbors murmured in agreement, some even clapping. Karen? She snapped. With an incoherent shriek, she spun around, stomped back across the street, and kicked one of her own moving boxes. It burst open, spilling random junk all over the sidewalk. One of the movers, clearly fed up with her attitude, sighed and muttered, Lady, just get in the car already. And with that, Karen stormed into her vehicle, slammed the door shut, and sped off down the street, never looking back. The second she was gone, the entire neighborhood cheered. Lisa turned to me, grinning. I feel like we need a toast for this historic moment. Jim raised his beer. To a Karen-free neighborhood. And just like that, Oak Ridge Estates was finally, blessedly Karen-free. But little did I know, the best revenge was yet to come. With Karen officially gone, the neighborhood felt lighter. It was like a storm had passed, and for the first time in years, people could breathe. The fear of ridiculous fines, the constant threats, the never-ending battles over stupid rules, all of it was over. Or so we thought. See, Karen was gone, but her damage? That was still very much alive and well. The HOA board, now in full meltdown mode, had no idea how to function without her. Mark Reynolds, the spineless HOA president, tried to act like he was in control, but without Karen doing his dirty work, he was exposed as nothing more than a puppet. Within a week of Karen's departure, an emergency HOA meeting was called. I wasn't planning on attending, but Lisa convinced me. Come on, you have to be there. It's going to be a disaster, and I want front row seats. Jim grinned. I'm bringing popcorn. So we went. The moment we walked into the HOA clubhouse, it was pure chaos. Half the room was filled with angry homeowners, all of them demanding answers. The other half, a handful of nervous HOA board members, looking like they had just realized they were on a sinking ship. Mark cleared his throat, tapping the microphone. All right, everyone, let's settle down. We understand that there are some concerns. Lisa snorted. Concerns? Try full-scale rebellion. A woman in the crowd stood up. Where is all the HOA money, Mark? Silence. Mark adjusted his tie, sweating. Well, you see, that's what we wanted to address today. There are some financial discrepancies. Jim leaned over and muttered, That's rich speak for, we're broke. Mark gulped visibly, then continued. After recent investigations, it's come to our attention that certain funds were mismanaged. Another neighbor stood up. Mismanaged? You mean stolen? Karen was using our HOA fees to pay for her personal expenses, wasn't she? Mark's face turned red. Now, let's not throw around accusations. Lisa crossed her arms. Mark, shut up. We all saw the leaked bank records. She was using HOA money to pay for spa treatments and first-class vacations. Mark winced. Because here's the thing, Lisa was right. Someone, a hero honestly, had leaked the HOA's financial records onto the neighborhood forum. And what did they show? Karen had been funneling HOA funds into maintenance projects that never existed. Thousands of dollars marked for landscaping improvements went straight into her personal account. The crowd exploded. A man in the back yelled, So you're telling us we paid HOA fees for years just so Karen could fly first class to Cancun? Another woman shouted, I got fined for having a flower pot on my porch while she was spending our money on Botox. Mark held up his hands. We understand everyone is upset, but we're working on a resolution. Lisa laughed. Yeah, here's a resolution. Disband EA. Silence. Mark blinked. Excuse me? Jim stood up. You heard her. We don't need an HOA. Look around. The only person who actually cared about enforcing this nonsense was Karen, and now she's gone. The rest of us? We just want to live our lives without being harassed over mailbox colors. Murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. Mark stammered. But the HOA maintains community standards. Without us, there would be chaos. I raised an eyebrow. Would there? Or would we finally have peace? That was it. That was the moment everything changed. What started as a tense meeting turned into a movement. One by one, homeowners stood up, voicing their support. No one wanted to keep paying fees just so Mark and his spineless cronies could try to cling to power. And that's when someone called for a vote. Mark freaked out. He tried to stall, saying, "This isn't how it works. You can't just vote to get rid of the HOA." But he was wrong. Someone had done their research. The HOA bylaws stated that if a supermajority of homeowners voted to disband, the HOA had to dissolve. So we voted. And guess what? 80% of the neighborhood voted yes. The HOA was officially dead. Mark looked like he was about to pass out. This isn't happening. Lisa grinned. Oh, it's happening. Pack your bags, Mark. Your HOA empire just crumbled. Jim raised his beer. To a Karen-free, a free neighborhood. The room erupted into cheers. And just like that, we had finally, officially, completely won. Karen had lost. The HOA had crumbled. And for the first time in years, our neighborhood was finally ours again. After the chaotic downfall of the HOA, life in the neighborhood started to feel surreal. For the first time in years, people could go about their daily routines without the looming threat of some ridiculous fine hanging over their heads. No more letters, no more inspections, no more Karen. It felt like we had won a war. In many ways we had. But while everyone was celebrating, I was scheming. You see, even though Karen had run off in disgrace, her legacy of insanity still lingered. She had ruled this neighborhood like a wannabe dictator, issuing unjust fines, enforcing absurd rules, and spying on people as if she were running some dystopian nightmare. And while she was gone, her house wasn't. That's when the idea hit me. Karen's house had been foreclosed in the wake of her legal troubles. With her financial misdeeds coming to light, the HOA's assets were frozen, and she was forced out of the very house she used as her base of operations. And me? I had the perfect opportunity to make sure she never had the chance to come back. I reached out to a real estate agent to see if the property was up for grabs. Sure enough, it was listed at a heavily discounted price, a foreclosure fire sale. Apparently, Karen had defaulted on several payments, and the bank was looking to offload it as quickly as possible. So I bought it. Lisa almost spit out her coffee when I told her. "You bought Karen's house?" Jim let out a deep belly laugh, clapping me on the back. "Oh man, this is legendary. What are you going to do with it?" "Burn sage to cleanse the demons out of it." I smirked. "No, I have something better in mind." See, Karen had used that house as her castle, her throne of tyranny, a place where she schemed, fined, and tormented the neighborhood. But now, it was going to become a sanctuary. I renovated it, not in some elaborate way, just enough to modernize it and erase the lingering scent of Karen's perfume and entitlement. I made sure it had a cozy feel, with warm lighting, comfortable furniture, and a fully stocked mini-fridge. And then, I turned it into an Airbnb. Not just any Airbnb, though. An Airbnb for people who have suffered under tyrannical HOAs. I listed it as the HOA-free retreat, branding it as a safe haven for anyone who had ever been bullied by an HOA board, fined for something absurd, or harassed for not conforming to pointless rules. The first booking came within hours. A man from Arizona messaged me saying, "I just got out of an HOA battle where they tried to fine me for leaving my garage door open for 15 minutes. Staying here feels like poetic justice." Then came another guest, a woman from Florida, who wrote, "My HOA sent me a fine because my trash can was visible for 30 minutes after pickup. I need this trip." It became a viral hit. Travel bloggers picked up the story. News outlets started running pieces on the infamous house of HOA horrors turned getaway destination. Suddenly, my little revenge project had become something so much bigger. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get any better, Karen found out. One night, about a month later, I was sitting on my couch scrolling through emails when my phone buzzed with a new message from an anonymous account. The subject line, "You think this is funny?" I clicked on it, already grinning because I knew exactly who it was. The email read, "You are mocking me, mocking everything I built. I hope you realize you've turned my house into a den of degeneracy. You will regret this. This isn't over. I actually had to put my phone down because I was laughing so hard. Lisa, who happened to be over, peered at my screen. Oh my God. She emailed you. I nodded, wiping a tear from my eye. Jim, cracking open a beer, grinned ear to ear. Man, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. What you gonna say back? I leaned back, still laughing, and typed my reply. Sorry, I don't take feedback from chainsaw-wielding criminals. And with that, I hit send, closed my laptop, and kicked back in my free neighborhood, knowing that for the first time in years, we had truly finally won. The weeks after Karen's departure felt almost unreal. For years, she had been a constant presence, a looming shadow over the neighborhood, dictating everything from lawn heights to mailbox colors. Now, with her gone, Oak Ridge Estates finally felt like a real community again. People were relaxed, kids played outside without the fear of being scolded for disrupting neighborhood harmony, and the days of pointless HOA fines were officially over. But the biggest transformation, Danny. For the first time in years, my son wasn't afraid to just be a kid. He no longer hesitated when he rolled his wheelchair out onto the front lawn, no longer worried about disapproving glares or whispered complaints about how his wheelchair ramp was ruining the aesthetic. He smiled more, laughed more. And for the first time since Karen humiliated him, he was ready to host his own barbecue. That's right. Danny wanted to celebrate. And this time, it wasn't just a casual cookout. It was a neighborhood-wide event, a true final goodbye to the tyranny of HOA Karen. We called it the Great Freedom Barbecue. Jim, Lisa, and half the neighborhood helped set it up. We had grill stations, homemade side dishes, tables full of desserts, and Danny's personal request, an entire section dedicated to different styles of burgers. Danny sat at the main table, helping to hand out plates, and when people asked him what he wanted on his own burger, he grinned ear to ear. Extra bacon. Lisa laughed. That's a solid choice, kid. You've got good taste. But just as we were getting comfortable, something unexpected happened. A familiar black SUV rolled up to the edge of the park. The chatter died down, and a few heads turned, recognizing the vehicle immediately. Jim frowned. No way. Lisa narrowed her eyes. Is that? The door opened, and out stepped Karen's ex-husband. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see what he would do. Was he here to defend Karen? To confront us? To demand we apologize for getting his wife arrested? He took a long look around, then made his way straight toward me. I set my plate down, squaring my shoulders. Something I can help you with? He paused, glanced at the massive barbecue setup, at Danny, at the smiling, happy neighbors, then looked back at me and smirked. Hell of a party. Got room for one more. The entire neighborhood burst into laughter. Lisa shook her head, chuckling. So, you're not here to cause problems? He let out a dry laugh. No. Just figured I should meet the people who finally did what I couldn't. Jim raised an eyebrow. And what's that? Karen's ex leaned in, lowering his voice. Got rid of her. That was it. The final confirmation. Karen was gone for good, and even her own ex-husband wanted nothing to do with her. I chuckled, gesturing toward the grill. Well, in that case, grab a plate. There's plenty of food. And just like that, we added one more to the party. As the evening went on, as music played, drinks flowed, and kids ran through the grass, I sat back, taking it all in. Danny was happy. The neighborhood was finally free. Karen had spent years trying to control this community. And in the end, all she did was unite us against her. We didn't just survive her reign. We thrived in spite of it. And as I took a bite of my burger, extra bacon, just like Danny's, I knew. This was how life was always meant to be. I thought that courtroom disaster would be the final nail in Karen's coffin. I thought she'd finally disappear, too humiliated to show her face in public again. But Karen, she was like a cockroach, resilient, stubborn, and impossible to kill. 3 days after the lawsuit was laughed out of court, I was enjoying a quiet evening on my porch, watching the sunset, when I saw something strange. A moving van, parked down the street. And standing beside it, Karen. She was back. Lisa, who was watering her lawn, nearly dropped the hose. No freaking way. Jim walked out onto his porch, holding a beer. He squinted down the street, then groaned. Oh, for the love of, she's moving back. Sure enough, Karen was barking orders at some unfortunate movers, directing them to carry her things into a house that had been on the market for months. Jim frowned. Did she just buy another house here? Lisa pulled out her phone and started furiously typing. I need to check something. Meanwhile, I just stood there, watching Karen smirk like she had already won. And then, as if she could feel me staring, she turned, locked eyes with me, and waved. A slow, smug wave, like she was declaring victory. I exhaled sharply. Oh, she's gonna regret that. Lisa gasped. You need to see this. She held up her phone, and there on the screen was an article from a real estate news site. Karen hadn't bought the house. She had rented it. And not just any rental. It was one of the Airbnb properties. She had rented a house in her own former HOA. Jim nearly choked on his beer. She's living in an Airbnb? Oh, this is too good. Lisa cackled. She's literally paying rent to live in a neighborhood that voted her out. Oh my God. I was grinning like an idiot. Because this was peak karma. Karen had spent years lording over this neighborhood, acting like she was untouchable, terrorizing homeowners with insane fines and bogus rules. And now, she was paying rent in a place where she had zero power. But of course, Karen being Karen, she didn't see it that way. No, in her mind, this was her grand return, her comeback, her chance to take control again. And she wasted no time trying to reclaim her throne. The attempted takeover. Within 24 hours of moving in, Karen was already making demands. She stormed into the local town meeting, insisting that the neighborhood form a new HO, citing community standards and preserving home values. The room erupted in laughter. Someone in the back shouted, "Sit down, Chainsaw Karen." Lisa, who had attended purely for entertainment, texted me live updates. Lisa, bro. She's getting roasted. Lisa, she just tried to propose a new HOA rule, and some guy in the front row went, "Ma'am, you don't even own property here." Lisa, I think she's about to cry. Jim, who had also tagged along, sent me a video clip. In it, Karen was standing at the podium, her face red with frustration, yelling, "You need me. This community is falling apart without regulations. Look at these garbage cans. They're not uniform. Look at these lawns. Some are slightly longer than others. This is chaos." The entire room booed her. Someone threw a wadded-up HOA violation letter at her. The meeting organizer sighed and rubbed his temples. "Ma'am, we're not bringing back the HOA. You're welcome to submit concerns through proper channels, but at this time, we're not interested." Karen? She screamed in frustration, threw a tantrum like a toddler. Then she stormed out, muttering about how we were all ungrateful degenerates. The final meltdown. Karen tried everything to regain control. She left anonymous notes on people's doors, kindly requesting that they mow their lawns at the exact same height. She called the city inspectors, trying to report imaginary violations. She even emailed me directly. Yes, again, claiming that my Airbnb property was ruining the integrity of the community. I sent back one word. Oh. Finally, after weeks of being ignored, ridiculed, and completely powerless, Karen broke. One morning, we all woke up to find a moving truck in her driveway again. She was leaving. For real this time. Jim was the first to spot her, watching for his porch, grinning like a lunatic. "Guys, she's packing up." Lisa ran out with her phone, already recording. "Oh, this is a historic moment. We need to commemorate it." As we stood there, watching Karen stomp around angrily, barking orders at the movers, she suddenly noticed us. She froze, her face turning even redder than before. For a split second, I thought she might actually flip us off. Instead, she spun around, stomped into her car, and sped off, never looking back. The second she was gone, the entire street erupted into cheers. Lisa grinned. "That's it. We need a block party." Jim raised his beer. To a Karen-free, a free neighborhood. And just like that, the neighborhood was officially, completely, permanently rid of her. Karen had lost. We had won. And peace was finally restored.